That night, my phone buzzed. A message from Mom, brief and chilling. "Sweetheart, I'm having a headache, nausea, just like the day your dad had his stroke. I'm so scared." My heart seemed to stop. Dad had been diagnosed as dying from heart disease. But now, Mom was trembling, pleading for help. I rushed into the dark night, desperate to save her. And little did I know that moment would open the door to a horrifying truth. A truth about my father's death and about the younger brother I once thought was just the overly indulged child of our parents. Hello, my name is Bryson. I'm 34 years old, living in a small suburban house with my wife Amanda and our little daughter Monica. From the outside, my life might seem like what many people dream of. A stable job, enough income for our small family to live comfortably without want. But beneath that peaceful facade, there's a scar in my heart that never heals. It's not something grand or obvious, but more like a tiny thorn that pricks my heart now and then, reminding me of things I've tried to forget. It's the story of my family. Not the small family I have now, but the larger one I grew up in, with my parents and my younger brother, Hayden. I distanced myself from them, not because I didn't love them, but because I needed space to protect myself, to shield my heart from old wounds. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other, where Sunday afternoons were filled with laughter and the smell of Mom's freshly baked cookies. My father, George, was a stern, quiet man, but deeply proud of his family. He worked at an auto manufacturing plant, leaving early and returning late, his hands rough from grease and sweat. My mother, Carol, was his complete opposite, warm, talkative, always striving to make everything perfect for the family. And then there was Hayden, my brother, 6 years younger than me. He was the center of attention, the little prince of our parents. And me? I was the eldest, expected to be strong, independent, and to sacrifice to keep the family harmonious. From a young age, I sensed the difference. It wasn't that my parents didn't love me. I knew they did, in their own way. But with Hayden, their love seemed more unconditional, more fervent. When I was 10, I biked over 3 miles to school every day while Hayden was driven by Mom, even when he was old enough to go on his own. At 15, I worked at a grocery store to afford my books while Hayden only had to ask, and our parents would buy him anything, from new basketball shoes to an expensive bike. I didn't resent them, or at least I tried not to. I told myself I was the older brother, I had to be strong. But deep down, I couldn't deny the feeling of being overlooked, of always being the second choice. I left town right after high school, attending college in a big city over 300 kilometers away. I didn't want to live in Hayden's shadow forever. Didn't want to keep hearing the unintentional comparisons from my parents. Hayden needs this, you understand. Your brother isn't as strong as you. I understood, but each time I heard those words, I felt pushed to the sidelines of the family. Now at 34, I've built a life of my own. But every time I think of my parents or Hayden, a dull ache stirs in my chest. I've kept in touch with them, but only minimally. A few calls during holidays, a few brief visits each year. I didn't want to dig into the past, but the past always found a way to creep into the present. It was Thanksgiving, one of the rare occasions when the extended family gathered at my parents' old house in our hometown. I drove for over 3 hours, Amanda beside me and Monica in the back, humming a children's song. I smiled at her through the rearview mirror, but inside I was tense. Returning to my parents' house always felt like stepping into an invisible battlefield where every word and action could reopen old wounds. Their house was the same as ever, with its faded white wooden fence and Mom's carefully tended garden blooming with vibrant yellow chrysanthemums. The smell of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie wafted through the air as I walked in. Mom hugged me tightly, her eyes lighting up when she saw Monica. Dad shook my hand, his grip firm but brief, as if he didn't know what to say to me. Then there was Hayden arriving with his new girlfriend, Sophia, a blonde woman dressed stylishly with a slightly haughty smile. Hayden was the same as always, confident, flashy, as if the world revolved around him. He clapped me on the shoulder, laughing loudly. Big brother, long time no see. Still as serious as ever, huh? I forced a smile, trying to keep the mood light. The dinner began. Everyone gathered around the old wooden table in the dining room. There were aunts, uncles, cousins, and a few close neighbors. Laughter, chatter, and the clinking of wine glasses filled the air. I looked around, trying to blend into the atmosphere, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place. Amanda squeezed my hand under the table, her eyes saying, "It'll be okay." Then, like a bomb going off, Dad stood up, lightly tapping his wine glass to get everyone's attention. He cleared his throat, his voice low but clear. "I have something to say to the family." He began, his gaze sweeping over everyone, lingering on Hayden a little longer. "Your mom and I have a life insurance policy worth $1 million, and we decided to name Hayden as the beneficiary." The room fell silent for a moment. I felt the blood in my veins freeze. $1 million for Hayden. I looked at Dad, hoping he'd say something more, explain why. But he continued calmly. "Bryson, you've got a solid career. You're doing fine. Hayden's in business. Things are unstable. He needs this support more." Mom nodded in agreement, her eyes glowing with pride as she looked at Hayden. Sophia, Hayden's girlfriend, flashed a triumphant smile, her hand gripping his tightly under the table. "And Hayden?" He just smiled, that smug grin I knew all too well from childhood. "Thank you, Mom and Dad," he said, his voice so sweet it made my skin crawl. I tried to stay calm, forcing a weak smile, but inside a wave of bitter resentment surged. Amanda squeezed my hand tighter, whispering, "Are you okay?" I nodded, but I wasn't okay. I felt like a knife had been plunged into my chest. Once again, I was the second choice. Once again, Hayden was placed above me, as if all my efforts, all my sacrifices meant nothing in my parents' eyes. The dinner continued, but I could no longer hear anything. The laughter, the conversations, it all became distant noise, drowned out by the pounding of my heart. I looked at Hayden, telling some story that made the whole table burst into laughter. I looked at Mom, listening intently, her eyes full of love. I looked at Dad, nodding as if everything in the world was right and fair. When the dinner ended, I stood up, hugged Mom, shook Dad's hand, and said goodbye to everyone. Hayden clapped me on the shoulder again, saying, "Don't take it to heart, okay? Mom and Dad just want what's best for the family." I nodded, saying nothing, because I knew if I opened my mouth I wouldn't be able to stay calm. On the way to the car, Amanda hugged me, her voice soft but resolute. "You don't need to prove anything to them anymore. You've done everything you could. Now you have me and Monica." I looked into her eyes, feeling the sincerity in every word. But inside, the pain still smoldered like a fire that never dies. I nodded, saying nothing, and quietly opened the car door for Amanda, placing Monica, who was fast asleep, in the back seat. The car door closed with a sharp thud, as if sealing shut a long day filled with tangled emotions. As I drove, I glanced at the rearview mirror, seeing Monica sleeping peacefully, her small lips slightly moving as if lost in a beautiful dream. I wondered if she would ever feel the way I did, pushed to the sidelines, abandoned by the very people who were supposed to love her most. That thought tightened my chest. I gripped the steering wheel harder, trying to focus on the road ahead, but my father's words from the dinner echoed in my mind. "Bryson, you've got a solid career. You're doing fine. Hayden needs this support more." Those words, though spoken calmly, struck me like a knife to the heart. I'm fine? I had pulled myself up from nothing, built everything with my own 2 hands without a single penny from my parents. And Hayden? He'd lived off their indulgence, handed every opportunity, and now, $1 million from their life insurance policy. $1 million. The number burrowed into my mind, not because I coveted the money, but because it was the starkest proof of the favoritism I'd tried to ignore for years. The car rolled along steadily, the hum of the engine blending with the whistle of wind through the window. I thought about Hayden, how he was always sheltered, always given everything without effort. I wasn't jealous of him, or at least I tried to convince myself I wasn't. but I couldn't deny the sense of injustice, the feeling that I'd been robbed of something I deserved. Recognition, unconditional love. "Bryce," Amanda spoke up, her voice gentle but firm, "don't let what happened with your parents and your brother hurt you anymore. Think about Monica, about us. They're not worth your pain." I nodded, but deep down I knew I couldn't let go so easily. My father's words, my mother's gaze, Hayden's smile, they were like needles pricking my heart. Not forceful, but sharp enough to make me bleed from within. The days following Thanksgiving passed in a deceptive calm. I returned to work, to busy days filled with meetings and project management, and to warm evenings with Amanda and Monica. But every time the phone rang with Mom's number, a wave of anxiety surged within me. She called more often now, her voice sometimes trembling, sometimes trying to sound cheerful. But I knew she was hiding something. It all began on a Saturday afternoon while I was playing with Monica in the backyard. She was chasing a butterfly, her clear laughter ringing out each time it fluttered just out of her reach. My phone buzzed and Hayden's name flashed on the screen. I frowned. He rarely called unless he needed something. I answered, keeping my tone steady. "Hey, Hayden, what's up?" His voice on the other end was urgent but carried that familiar, confident tone. "Bryson, you doing all right? Listen, I've got something important to talk about. I'm near your place. Can we meet?" I glanced at Monica, then at Amanda trimming plants in the garden. "It's not a great time. Just tell me over the phone." I didn't want to see Hayden, didn't want him dragging me into the trouble I knew was coming. "No, Bryson, this is serious. I need your help. Just this once, I swear." His voice dropped, tinged with something like desperation. I sighed, knowing I couldn't refuse outright. "Fine, come over, but make it quick." Half an hour later, Hayden showed up at my door, still with his usual flashy flair, an expensive dress shirt, a gleaming watch, but his eyes were bloodshot as if he hadn't slept in days. Sophia, his girlfriend, wasn't with him. I invited him into the living room, keeping the atmosphere neutral. Monica ran over and hugged my leg, and I told her to go play with Mom so I could talk to her uncle. "What's going on, Hayden?" I got straight to the point, sitting across from him. Hayden took a deep breath and launched into his spiel, his voice smooth like a seasoned salesman. "Bryson, I'm in a bind. I opened a high-end fashion store downtown, big investment, but the market's tougher than I expected. I'm in debt, a decent chunk. I just need you to loan me 100 grand. I swear I'll pay you back double in 2 years. I've got a new plan, and this time it's a sure thing." I stared at him. $100,000. It wasn't an impossible sum for me, but the thought of giving money to Hayden made me want to laugh. He'd never paid back anything. Not money, not trust. "Hayden," I said, my voice calm but firm, "do you think I'm a bank? Where's all the money Mom and Dad poured into you gone? Wasn't that enough? You still haven't learned to stand on your own 2 feet? Hayden's face flushed, his smug smile vanishing. "You're always like this, Bryson. Always looking down on me. You think you're better because you've got a steady job, a perfect family, right? I just need one chance, one bit of help." "One chance?" I cut him off, my voice louder than I intended. "How many chances have you had, Hayden? Since we were kids, everything you wanted was handed to you. Me? I had to earn every single thing. I don't owe you anything." Hayden shot to his feet, pointing at me, his eyes blazing. "Fine, Bryson. You'll regret not helping me. You think you're so noble, but you're just a selfish jerk who doesn't know what family means." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The sound startled Monica, who ran over and asked, "Is Uncle Hayden mad, Daddy?" I hugged her, forcing a smile. "It's okay, sweetheart. Uncle's just a little tired." But inside, I knew this wasn't the end. A few days later, I got a call from Tom, an old friend who'd taken martial arts classes with Hayden and me as kids. "Bryson, I heard about Hayden," he said, his voice laced with concern. "He's gone bust. The fashion store shut down, and he's drowning in debt. Now he and Sophia have moved in with your parents. I heard he's been bragging that your folks mortgaged their house to borrow money to pay off his debts and fund another startup. I gripped the phone tightly, feeling like someone had punched me in the chest. Mortgaged the house? My parents had spent their lives building that home, the one filled with memories where I grew up. And now they were willing to risk it all to bail out Hayden's mistakes. A wave of anger surged through me, mixed with helplessness. I couldn't change how my parents saw Hayden, couldn't make them see they were enabling someone who never learned to value their sacrifices. I called Mom, trying to keep my voice calm. "Mom, I heard Hayden's moved back in with you and Dad. What's going on?" Her voice on the other end sounded weary, as if she were hiding stress. "Oh, it's just temporary. Hayden's hit a rough patch, so your dad and I want to help him get back on his feet. You know how it is. He needs time. And the house? The mortgage?" I couldn't hold back, my voice rising. "Mom, did you and Dad really do that? For what? So Hayden can keep throwing money at his crazy ideas?" There was a long pause before she spoke, her voice quieter. "Bryson, don't worry. We know what we're doing. Hayden's your brother. You have to understand he needs us." I hung up, unwilling to hear more. Her words were another knife, cutting deeper into an old wound. I sank into a chair, staring out the window where Monica was playing with Amanda. I wondered why my parents never saw what I'd done, what I'd sacrificed. Why did they always choose Hayden even when he kept failing, kept taking advantage of them? That night, lying next to Amanda as she talked about Monica's day at school, my mind was elsewhere. I thought about Hayden, how he'd once again become the center of the family while I, as always, was pushed to the sidelines. I thought about my parents' house, once my safe haven, now at risk because of my brother's recklessness. And I thought about the $1 million life insurance policy, the one my parents believed would be Hayden's salvation. But deep inside, a bad feeling began to creep in, like a dark shadow silently descending over our family. The months after Thanksgiving brought more frequent calls from Mom. At first, she'd ask about Monica's health, talk about the chrysanthemums in her garden, or complain about the damp weather in town. But gradually, her tone changed. Gone was the cheerful, energetic voice of the woman who always tried to keep the family together. Instead, I heard anxiety, exhaustion, and sometimes fear. "Bryson, are you doing okay?" she'd start. But within a few sentences, she'd shift to talking about Hayden. "Your brother. He's making everything a mess," she said during one call, her voice trembling through the phone's speaker. "He's been arguing with your dad constantly, all about money. He wants your dad to cash out the life insurance policy for the money. He says he needs more funds, but your dad won't do it." I gripped the phone tightly, feeling a heavy weight settle on my chest. "What did Dad say?" I asked, though I could already guess part of it. Mom sighed, the sound carrying her helplessness. "Your dad got angry. He said, 'I've already mortgaged the house for you, Hayden. I can't keep throwing money into your bottomless pit.' Bryson, I'm so worried. Your dad's had heart problems, you know that. These arguments, I'm afraid they'll wear him out." I fell silent, unsure of what to say. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell Mom that Hayden didn't deserve their sacrifices anymore. But another part felt powerless, as if I were watching a ship slowly sink with no way to stop it. "Mom, tell Dad to rest more," I finally said, my voice dry. "And take care of yourself too." Mom gave a faint laugh, but I could hear the strain in it. "I know. I just want our family to be okay. Don't worry too much, your dad and I will be fine." But I couldn't help worrying. Each time I hung up, a growing unease gnawed at me like a storm quietly brewing. I told Amanda, and she shook her head, her eyes full of concern. "Bryce, I don't like this at all. Hayden's pushing your parents into a dangerous situation. Don't you think you should do something?" "Do what?" I asked, my voice more bitter than I intended. "Go there and tell them to stop trusting Hayden? You think they'll listen to me, Amanda? They never have. Never." Amanda didn't respond, just hugged me, but her embrace couldn't dispel the suffocating sense of helplessness gripping my heart. Then on a Tuesday morning, the phone rang while I was at the office. Mom's number flashed on the screen and I answered with a sinking feeling. "Bryson." Her voice was choked as if she were holding back tears. "Your dad, he collapsed in the living room this morning. I called an ambulance, but it's very serious." I sat frozen, still clutching the phone, my mind blank. "What?" I whispered, as if I couldn't believe what I'd just heard. "Dad, what happened to him?" "The doctors say he had a heart attack. His chances of survival are very low. The family needs to prepare." She continued, her voice breaking. "He's had heart issues, you know." I didn't think it would happen so fast. I don't remember what I said to her after that. Maybe I mumbled some words of comfort, promised to come right away. But when I hung up, it felt like the world was crumbling beneath me. My father, the stern but steadfast pillar of our family, was in critical condition. I couldn't believe he might leave us just months after announcing the life insurance policy would go to Hayden. I took leave from work and drove to town that same day. Amanda wanted to come, but I told her to stay with Monica. I needed to face this alone, at least for now. When I arrived, Mom was in the living room, her eyes swollen and red, clutching a crumpled handkerchief. Hayden was there with Sophia, both unusually quiet. Hayden hugged Mom, but his eyes were empty, as if he didn't fully grasp the pain. Sophia sat in a corner, silently scrolling on her phone, as if Dad's heart attack was a minor inconvenience. After days of fighting for his life in the ICU, the doctor came out with the news we all dreaded. Dad didn't make it. We held his funeral in a heavy atmosphere of grief and shock. The small-town church was packed with relatives, neighbors, and Dad's old friends. People whispered about his sudden passing, about how he was a good man, a devoted father. I stood by the coffin, looking at Dad's face, now peaceful but cold. I remembered the rare moments I cherished, him teaching me to fish by the lake, quietly placing a hand on my shoulder when I got good grades, even if he never directly praised me. Though he always favored Hayden, I knew he loved me in his own way. But now he was gone, and I no longer had the chance to tell him I'd forgiven him, that I just wanted him to see me. In the days after the funeral, I stayed longer to support Mom. She became quieter, as if part of her soul had left with Dad. Hayden, on the other hand, seemed to bounce back quickly. Just a week later, I overheard Mom say he'd contacted the insurance company to claim the $1 million life insurance payout. "He says he'll use it to pay off debts and start over," she said, her voice full of hope. But all I felt was a chill running down my spine. $1 million. The number echoed in my mind, not because I wanted it, but because I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Dad's death was too sudden, too abrupt, coming right after those heated arguments with Hayden. I recalled Mom's words about their fights, about Hayden pressuring Dad to cash out the insurance policy. A horrifying thought flashed through my mind, but I quickly pushed it away. No, it couldn't be. Hayden was my brother. Selfish and irresponsible as he was, he couldn't do something that terrible. Could he? When I left town to return to Amanda and Monica, I hugged Mom tightly, feeling the fragility in her frame. "Take care of yourself, Mom," I whispered. "If anything happens, call me right away." She nodded, but her eyes were vacant, as if she were lost in her grief. The weeks following the funeral were filled with more frequent calls to Mom, even if just to check on small things. But each time I heard her voice, I felt an invisible distance growing wider. She spoke less, her tone weary, as if carrying a burden she didn't want to share. I tried to coax her into opening up, but she deflected, asking about Monica or my job instead. "I'm fine, Bryson," she'd always say, but I knew she wasn't. No one could be fine after losing their lifelong partner, especially with Hayden and Sophia still there, casting dark shadows over the house that once brimmed with laughter. About a month later, Hayden received the $1 million payout from Dad's life insurance policy. I wasn't surprised, but what shocked me was how he used it. Hayden and Sophia started living like lottery winners. All-night parties, lavish shopping sprees, from designer handbags to short getaways at expensive resorts. They were still staying in Mom's house, but from what I heard, they treated it like their own property. They changed the furniture, repainted the walls, even turned away Mom's old friends when they came to visit, claiming she needs rest. Mom didn't talk much about it, but through our calls, I sensed the atmosphere in the house had changed. It was no longer the warm home I knew, where Mom busied herself with her golden chrysanthemums or baked fragrant cookies. Now she spoke of the house with detachment, as if she were merely a guest. "Hayden and Sophia are sprucing things up," she said during one call, trying to sound cheerful. "They say they want the house to be more modern. I'm not used to it, but it'll probably be fine." I gripped the phone, fighting the anger rising within me. "Mom, that's yours and Dad's house. How can you let them do this? They have no right." She was silent for a moment, then sighed. "Bryson, I just want Hayden to be stable. Your dad's gone, and I thought, maybe this will help him grow up. I don't want to lose anyone else." Her words twisted my heart. I wanted to scream, to tell her Hayden would never change, that he was only exploiting her kindness. But I couldn't. I didn't want to hurt her more when she was still drowning in grief over Dad. Instead, I said, "Mom, if you need anything, tell me. I'm always here." But Mom didn't call for help. Instead, her text messages started arriving, often late at night when I was already asleep next to Amanda. Short, sorrowful messages like fragments of her broken heart. "Bryson, I'm so tired," one read. "Hayden wants me to sell the house, but I don't want to. He's angry, says I'm selfish. I don't know what to do." Another a few days later. "Sophia keeps the house keys. I can't go out without her. I feel like a stranger in my own home." Reading those messages, I felt like someone was choking me. I called back immediately, but Mom often didn't answer, or if she did, she'd say a few brief words and hang up. "I'm fine, Bryson. Don't worry." But I knew she wasn't. I pictured Mom, the woman who was once so strong, the soul of our family, now imprisoned in her own home, treated like a servant by the son she'd loved so fiercely. Once she mentioned that Sophia had locked the pantry, only letting her take what they allowed. "She says I eat unhealthy, that I'll get sick," Mom said, her voice trembling. "But I just want to cook a meal for myself. I miss the days when your dad and I cooked together in the kitchen." She trailed off, and I heard her stifled sobs. I gripped the phone, feeling like my blood was boiling. "Where's Hayden?" I asked, my voice hardening. "He's letting Sophia treat you like this?" Mom was quiet for a moment, then said softly, He told me not to make a big deal out of it. He says Sophia's just looking out for me. But Bryson, I'm starting to think I was wrong to spoil him so much. Your dad and we were wrong." Her confession pierced my heart like a knife. I wanted to shout that I'd known this for years, that I'd tried to warn them countless times, but they never listened. But I couldn't say that, not when she was so broken. Instead, I said, "Mom, come live with me. I'll take care of you. You don't have to stay there, you don't have to endure them." But Mom refused, as I'd expected. "No, Bryson. I don't want the world to know our family's troubles. And I don't want to burden you. You have your own family, Monica. I'll be fine. I still believe Hayden will change." I hung up, overwhelmed by a wave of helplessness. I told Amanda, and she hugged me, her voice trembling with anger. "Bryce, you can't let your mom live like this. They're abusing her, do you realize that? It's not just disrespect. It's cruel." "I know," I said, my voice hoarse. "But she won't leave. I can't force her." Amanda looked at me, her eyes blazing with determination. "Then you have to do something, Bryce. If she won't leave, you need to find a way to protect her. You can't just stand by and watch them destroy her." I nodded, but inside I didn't know what to do. I felt like I was facing an insurmountable wall. Every message from Mom, every story she told was another cut to my soul. I thought about Dad, his sudden death, and once again that bad feeling stirred within me. Something wasn't right, but I didn't dare dig deeper. Not now, not when Mom was so fragile. Then came that fateful night. The clock was nearing 11 and I was sitting on the sofa skimming through my last work emails before bed. Amanda was already asleep and Monica was dreaming in her room, clutching her favorite teddy bear. My phone buzzed, a sharp ting piercing the quiet. I glanced at the screen and my heart stopped when I saw Mom's name. A text message. Just a few short lines, but they sent ice through my veins. Sweetheart, I feel awful. Headache, nausea, heart pounding. Just like the day your dad collapsed. I'm scared. So scared. I read those words over and over, each one hammering my chest. Headache, nausea, heart pounding. The symptoms were too familiar, a terrifying echo of what Mom had described before Dad's collapse. Memories of his death flooded back, mingling with her desperate texts about the control and abuse from Hayden and Sophia. I didn't think. I couldn't think. Only one thought consumed me. I have to save Mom. This time, I couldn't let tragedy repeat itself. I bolted out of the house, grabbing only my car keys and throwing on a jacket. I didn't call Amanda. I didn't want her to worry. I just shouted, "I have to go to Mom's, it's an emergency." The drive to town was over 3 hours, but I didn't care. I floored the gas, the engine roaring into the dark night, the car speeding down the empty highway. Streetlights flashed by, their dim yellow glow blurring like faint streaks in my mind. I gripped the steering wheel, my heart pounding, each beat a reminder. Hurry, Bryson. Hurry! The road stretched endlessly, but I didn't feel time. My mind was filled with Mom, the woman who'd once been so strong, the heart of our family, now lying somewhere, frail, panicked, calling out to me. I remembered her texts, her stories of Sophia locking doors, of Hayden berating her. I recalled her trembling voice saying she was scared, and I cursed myself for not acting sooner. Why didn't I force her to leave that place? Why did I let her stay with Hayden, with Sophia in a house that had become her prison? When I reached town, it was late, the familiar streets shrouded in darkness. Mom's house loomed under the streetlights, its faded white wooden fence still standing, but it looked cold, like a ghostly shell of itself. I screeched to a stop, ran to the door and pounded on it. "Mom," I shouted, my voice echoing in the stillness. "Mom, it's me." The door opened, but it wasn't Mom. Hayden stood there in a rumpled t-shirt, his eyes bloodshot as if he'd been drinking. Sophia stood behind him, arms crossed, glaring at me with annoyance. "Bryson, what's with the noise in the middle of the night?" Hayden said, his tone irritated. I clenched my jaw. "Where's Mom? Let me see her now." Hayden looked startled, then asked quickly, "What do you need her for?" I gripped my phone tightly, my voice low and sharp. "She texted me saying she's not well. I need to see her to know what's going on." Hayden froze for a moment, his eyes darting, then stammered, "Mom, she's resting. Just a bit tired. Don't blow this out of proportion like it's something serious." "Tired?" I roared, unable to contain my anger. "She texted me begging for help. Get out of the way, Hayden, let me see her." Hayden stood firm, blocking the door, shaking his head. "Calm down. She doesn't need a hospital. Taking her there will just bother everyone and waste money. Let her rest." Sophia chimed in, her voice sweet but cold. "Exactly, Bryson. Don't make a big deal out of it. She complains a lot, you know that." I didn't listen anymore. I shoved Hayden aside and stormed into the house, my heart pounding. The living room was dark, lit only by a faint lamp in the corner. Then I saw Mom, curled up on the sofa, sweat beading on her forehead, her trembling hands clutching her chest. Her eyes were wide, panicked, as if pleading with me. "Bryson," she whispered, her voice so faint I barely heard it. I'm not okay." I knelt beside her, grabbing her hand, feeling her icy fingers. "Mom, I'm here. I'm taking you to the hospital now." Without waiting, I scooped her up, her body so light it made my heart ache. She'd once been the vibrant woman bustling in the kitchen and garden, but now she was like a brittle leaf, fragile in my arms. Hayden grabbed my shoulder, trying to stop me. "Are you crazy, Bryson? She just needs to sleep. Don't make a scene." I spun around, locking eyes with him, my anger erupting. I'd rather be wrong than watch her collapse like Dad did. I growled, my voice thundering. Hayden stepped back, stunned, while Sophia stood silent, not daring to speak. I carried Mom to the car, gently laying her in the back seat, cushioning her head with my jacket. I started the engine, its roar shattering the night's silence. The speedometer climbed far past the limit, but I didn't care. Every second was a gamble with her life. I glanced at Mom in the rearview mirror, her eyes closed, her breathing shallow. "Hold on, Mom," I whispered, as if my words could anchor her. "I won't lose you." The drive to the hospital felt like an eternity. I sped through dark roads, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't lose Mom, couldn't let her go like Dad. Not now, not when I still had a chance. When I screeched to a halt at the hospital entrance, I shouted for medical staff. They rushed Mom into the ER, and I followed, holding her hand until a nurse told me to wait in the hallway. I stood there, back against the wall, breathing heavily, sweat dripping down my forehead. The minutes dragged like hours, each footstep of a doctor, each sound from the ER tightening the knot in my chest. Finally, a doctor emerged, his face grave. "Are you Carol's son?" he asked. I nodded, barely breathing. "We've run preliminary tests. Your mother's condition is critical. There are signs of an unusual toxin in her system. We need to run more tests, but you should prepare yourself." Toxin. The word rang in my head like a death knell. I stared at the doctor, the floor beneath me seeming to collapse. "Toxin?" I repeated, my voice trembling. He placed a hand on my shoulder, his tone low but firm. "Yes. We're not sure yet. Stay here and keep waiting." I turned, helpless, peering through the small window on the ER door where cold white light illuminated the frantic shadows of moving figures. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms, trying to keep myself from breaking. "Hold on, Mom," I whispered, though I knew she couldn't hear me, tears silently streaming down my face. "Please don't leave me." Each passing minute felt like a century. I paced back and forth, my eyes glued to the door, as if staring long enough would make Mom walk out, smiling, saying it was all just a nightmare. But deep down, I knew the truth wasn't that simple. Her text: "Headache, nausea, heart pounding, just like the day your dad collapsed," echoed in my mind, a warning from beyond the grave. Then a doctor approached, his face stern, his eyes tinged with concern. "We have the official test results for Mrs. Carroll," he said, his voice low but clear. "There's ethylene glycol in her blood, the main component in antifreeze used for cars. This isn't natural poisoning. There are signs of deliberate intent." Ethylene glycol. Antifreeze. The words rang in my head, unfamiliar yet sharp, like knives piercing my heart. "Poisoning?" I repeated, my voice trembling, barely believing my ears. "You mean someone tried to harm my mother?" The doctor nodded, his gaze steady but regretful. "We've notified the police. They'll be here soon to investigate. But Bryson, your mother's condition is critical. We're doing everything we can." I turned away, fighting back tears. Poisoning. Who could be so cruel? Who could harm Mom, the woman who'd spent her life loving and sacrificing? Then, like a lightning bolt tearing through the night, memories of Dad's death flooded back. What Mom had described before he collapsed: headache, nausea, heart pounding. The same symptoms as now. A terrifying fear erupted, making me tremble. "No, it can't be," I gasped, my voice breaking. "Don't tell me. Dad was like this too." The doctor looked at me, silent at first, but his eyes seemed to confirm the suspicion screaming in my head. "We can't conclude anything about your father's death yet," he said cautiously. "But given what's happening, I suggest you speak with the police. They may want to revisit his case." The police arrived minutes later, 2 uniformed officers and a plainclothes detective. I sat in a small corner of the hospital hallway, recounting everything. Mom's desperate text, the months of her being controlled by Hayden and Sophia, the arguments Hayden had with Dad about money and the life insurance policy. The detective, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes, took careful notes. "Bryson," he said when I finished, "if what you're saying is accurate, we'll need to look into your father's death again. With your permission, we'd like to exhume his body for further testing. I nodded without hesitation. Do whatever it takes, I said, my voice hardening with the anger simmering inside. If someone harmed my parents, I want the truth. The police began their investigation the next day, and within a week, the detective called me to the station. I sat in a small, cold room across from him and a colleague. Bryson, he began, his voice heavy. We've completed the tests on your father's body. The results show traces of ethylene glycol matching your mother's case exactly. I sat frozen, feeling the world crumble around me. Ethylene glycol. Antifreeze. Not just mom, but dad too. His death, ruled as sudden cardiac arrest, wasn't natural. My parents were poisoned. They were murdered. And deep within, a name rose like a curse. Hayden. Hayden, I whispered, his name escaping like a blade. The detective looked at me, saying nothing, but his eyes suggested he was thinking the same. We don't have enough evidence to charge anyone yet, he said. But we'll keep investigating. You need to stay calm and let us do our job. Calm. How could I be calm knowing my parents, who'd sacrificed their lives, were victims of the very sun they'd indulged? My heart surged with rage, but it was laced with unbearable pain. My parents had been wrong to place all their faith in Hayden, to overlook me to protect him. And now, that favoritism had led them to this fate, turning the brother I once loved into a cold-blooded killer. I left the station, stepping into the frigid air. The wind cut through me, but I felt nothing except the burning pain in my chest. I looked up at the sky, where faint stars twinkled weakly, and silently vowed to my parents, I'll find the truth. I'll make whoever hurt you pay. But in my heart, I knew that truth wouldn't bring them back. It could only ease the pain slightly and shed light on a tragedy I wished I'd prevented long ago. The police officially launched a criminal investigation right after I left the station. Detective Harris, the man with the sharp eyes, called me the next morning. Bryson, he said, his voice calm but resolute, we need you at your mother's house this afternoon. We're conducting a search. Would you like to be there? I didn't hesitate. I'll be there, I replied, my voice firm. I wanted to see for myself, to witness what Hayden and Sophia had done in the house my parents had spent their lives building. When I arrived at Mom's house, the police were already there, along with a team of forensic experts. The house looked colder than ever, its faded white wooden fence carrying the sorrow of days gone by. Hayden and Sophia stood on the porch, their faces tense, their eyes avoiding mine. Hayden tried to flash a forced smile when he saw me, but I didn't return it. I couldn't look at him without thinking of the crimes he'd committed against our own parents. Detective Harris led me and the police team inside. The air in the house was heavy, as if Mom's spirit still lingered, watching us. We'll check every corner, Harris said. If there's any trace of antifreeze, we'll find it. They started in the garage, where Hayden kept his car and miscellaneous items. I stood in a corner watching the forensic experts open crates and inspect shelves. Then one spoke up, his voice cutting through the quiet. Detective, look at this. He held up a bottle of antifreeze, its cap already opened, the liquid sloshing inside. Not just one. They found 3 more, all opened, scattered in a corner of the garage. My heart tightened. Antifreeze. The substance that killed my parents. Hayden, standing nearby, quickly interjected, his voice urgent. That's just car stuff. My car had a coolant leak, so I bought those bottles. What's so strange about that? Detective Harris looked at him, his gaze icy. We'll verify that, Hayden. If it's just for the car, there won't be a problem. But his tone carried clear suspicion, and I saw Hayden swallow hard, his eyes darting to Sophia as if seeking rescue. The police moved to the kitchen. On the counter, they found a glass with traces of cloudy liquid. A forensic expert took a sample, then opened the trash bin, where they discovered an opened soda bottle with unusual chemical streaks inside. I stood there, watching their every move, feeling like my heart was being squeezed. Ordinary items, a glass, a soda bottle, had become evidence of a horrific crime. But the biggest shock came when they examined Sophia's personal computer found in the master bedroom, the room that once belonged to my parents. A forensic expert powered it on, scrolling through the search history, and I saw his face tense. "Detective," he called, his voice strained. "You need to see this." Harris stepped over and I followed, my heart pounding. On the screen were search terms: how ethylene glycol kills, ethylene glycol poisoning dosage, how to conceal heart poisoning. The timestamps aligned with the months before Dad's death and continued up to weeks before Mom's collapse. My blood felt like it froze. I turned to Sophia, who stood in the corner, her face pale. "How do you explain this?" I roared, unable to contain my anger. "You were researching how to kill, weren't you?" Sophia shook her head, her voice trembling. "No, it's not like that. I was just curious. I read an article online about some poisoning case. I didn't do anything." Hayden jumped in, his voice high-pitched, almost panicked. "Bryson, are you crazy? You think we're murderers? It's just a coincidence. Detective, you have to believe me. I didn't harm our parents." Detective Harris raised a hand, silencing them both. "We'll analyze the samples and data," he said, his voice calm but firm. "The timing of the antifreeze purchases, the traces in the house, the search history, and the test results from your parents' bodies all point in one direction. We'll get to the bottom of this." I looked at Hayden, his eyes avoiding mine, but I saw the fear in them. Sophia clutched her face, muttering something incoherent. I wanted to lunge at them, to scream, to demand justice for my parents right then and there. But I held back, knowing the truth needed to be uncovered clearly, not clouded by my emotions. The police left after collecting the evidence, taking the antifreeze bottles, the glass, the soda bottle, and Sophia's computer. Detective Harris turned to me. "We'll analyze everything thoroughly and prepare for an arrest warrant. Bryson, I need you to stay calm. We won't let the perpetrators escape." I nodded, but inside I couldn't be calm. I stood in front of Mom's house, staring at the closed door, once the heart of our family. Now it was merely the scene of a horrific crime. I thought of Dad, of Mom, of the times they protected Hayden, how they poured all their faith into him. And now that faith had betrayed them, stolen their lives. That night I returned to the hospital. A short while later, a nurse approached me, her face pale, and delivered the news. "Bryson," she said, her voice trembling, "I'm so sorry. Your mother, she didn't make it." The world around me shattered. I rushed toward the ER door, but the nurse stopped me. "You can't go in," she said, her voice filled with regret. "We did everything we could." I stood there, frozen, feeling as if my heart had been torn apart. I wasn't allowed to enter, to hold Mom's hand one last time, to say goodbye. I could only imagine her lying beyond that door, taking her final breath, her eyes surely filled with fear and regret, as if urging me to uncover the truth. I collapsed onto a chair, burying my face in my hands, tears streaming uncontrollably. "Mom," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I'm sorry, I couldn't save you." The pain engulfed me like a tidal wave, mixed with self-blame. I sat on the hard plastic chair in the hallway, watching medical staff pass by, their eyes filled with pity but distant. I couldn't sleep, though my body was exhausted. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mom's face, her eyes brimming with fear and regret, as if trying to tell me something. I thought of Dad, of his death labeled as heart disease, and of the antifreeze bottles in the garage, the search history on Sophia's computer. They were pieces of a horrific puzzle, and I knew Hayden, my brother, was at its center. I pulled out my phone, seeking some comfort in photos of Monica and Amanda, but a bad feeling gnawed at me, refusing to let me rest. I remembered the security camera system I'd installed at Mom's house months ago, when she started talking about Sophia's control over her. I'd set up an app to monitor it remotely, just in case something happened. With trembling hands, I opened the app and accessed the cameras in the living room and garage. The footage made my heart stop. In the dim glow of a nightlight, I saw Hayden and Sophia furtively packing. Hayden stuffed stacks of cash into a duffel bag while Sophia dragged a suitcase, her face tense, her eyes darting nervously. They moved quickly as if fleeing. I zoomed in on the garage camera, watching them haul the suitcase to the car, its headlights flashing as Hayden started the engine. I gripped the phone, my heart pounding. They were escaping. Hayden and Sophia knew the police were closing in and they were trying to slip away before getting caught. Without hesitation, I called Detective Harris. "Detective," I said, my voice urgent, "Hayden and Sophia are fleeing. I see them on the security cameras. They're leaving Mom's house right now." Harris responded immediately, his tone resolute. "Stay where you are, Bryson. We're on our way. Don't do anything dangerous." But I couldn't wait. I raced to the hospital parking lot, jumped into my car, and sped toward town, my heart pounding as if it would burst. I had to catch Hayden. I had to confront him even just once, to look into the eyes of the person who took my parents from me. As I neared the house, I saw the headlights of Hayden's car flash. Then it peeled out of the side street, speeding off frantically. Behind it, a line of police cars with blaring sirens and flashing red lights gave chase. I floored the gas, joining the pursuit, my heart hammering in my chest. The quiet town streets had become a battlefield, with police sirens echoing and flashing lights tearing through the night. The chase was breathless. Hayden swerved recklessly, trying to shake the police. I saw his car nearly collide with a truck at an intersection, tires screeching, leaving black skid marks on the road. The police stayed close, their loudspeaker booming, "Hayden Stetson, stop the vehicle immediately. You're surrounded." But Hayden didn't stop. I drove behind the police, keeping my distance but unable to take my eyes off Hayden's car. In my mind, images of my parents flashed. Mom's smile as she baked. Dad's stern but warm gaze when he taught me to fish. Hayden had stolen it all with his greed and selfishness. I gripped the steering wheel, tears streaming down my face, but I didn't stop. I couldn't let him escape. Finally, on a dead-end road near the suburban woods, the police boxed in Hayden's car. It skidded to a halt, tires sliding on the dirt, kicking up clouds of dust. Hayden jumped out, trying to flee into the forest, but two officers quickly chased him down, pinning him to the ground. Sophia slumped in the passenger seat, sobbing and screaming. "I didn't want to do it. He forced me. I didn't want to." I parked and stepped out, watching the scene from a distance. Hayden was handcuffed, his face twisted with anger and fear. He looked up, saw me, and shouted, "Bryson, you've ruined everything." "You never understood me. I only took what I deserved." His words were like a final knife to my heart. "Deserved?" I whispered, my voice trembling with rage. "You killed our parents for money, Hayden. You think that's what you deserved?" The police took Hayden and Sophia to the station. I followed, feeling like my body was moving on autopilot. At the station, Hayden remained defiant, shouting during questioning, "You've got nothing on me. I didn't do anything. It's all a coincidence." But his voice faltered. I stood outside the interrogation room, looking through the glass, seeing Hayden sitting there, his eyes avoiding mine, his cuffed hands trembling. Sophia in another room was sobbing, repeating that she only followed Hayden's orders. I looked at my brother, the boy I once protected, the center of our family, now a stranger, a cold-blooded killer. My eyes burned with anguish, but I didn't cry anymore. My tears had run dry, replaced by a burning resolve. Justice would not spare him. While Hayden and Sophia were held in custody, I had to arrange yet another funeral. In less than a year, the two people I loved most had been taken from me. The loss was so immense it felt like my heart would shatter, but I chose to channel my grief into strength. I vowed not to forgive my brother for what he'd done to our parents. Several months later, the trial of Hayden Stetson became the center of public attention. The small-town courtroom was packed. Reporters, neighbors, old friends of my parents, and strangers curious about this horrific story. I sat in the front row, Amanda beside me, gripping my hand tightly, while Monica stayed home with a friend to shield her from the media storm. Camera lenses pointed at me. Flashes went off, but I didn't care. My eyes were fixed ahead where Hayden sat, his black suit failing to mask his tense expression and darting eyes. Sophia sat nearby, her head bowed, her pale face hidden behind her hair. The trial began, and each piece of evidence hit like a hammer blow. Detective Harris presented the findings. The antifreeze bottles in the garage, the glass and soda bottle with traces of ethylene glycol, and the search history on Sophia's computer about poisoning methods and how to conceal them. Each piece was a fragment, forming a clear picture of Hayden and Sophia's crime. I sat there, listening to every word, feeling as if my heart was being crushed. The antifreeze bottles, once thought to be mere car supplies, were now the murder weapons that took my parents' lives. The turning point came when Sophia was called to the witness stand. She stood there, her voice trembling, her eyes red. "I knew it was wrong," she said, her voice faltering. "I knew Hayden was putting antifreeze in his parents' drinks. I saw him do it, but I didn't dare stop him. He said it was the only way to get money, to start over. I was scared of what he'd do to me if I didn't comply." The courtroom fell silent, broken only by Sophia's stifled sobs. I looked at her, feeling my blood boil. She knew, she saw, but she did nothing to save my parents. I turned to Hayden, hoping to see some remorse on his face, but there was none. He sat there, his gaze cold, lips pressed tight as if searching for a way to escape blame. When it was his turn, Hayden stood, his voice high-pitched and defiant. "I didn't do anything," he shouted. "It's all a coincidence. My parents died of illness, not because of me. Sophia's pinning it on me to save herself. You have no solid proof." But Hayden's words were like a fleeting breeze. The evidence was too clear, too damning. The timing of the antifreeze purchases, the traces in my parents' bodies, the search history, all pointed directly at him. I sat there, silently watching my brother, the boy my parents had sheltered so fiercely, the center of their love. Now he was nothing but a cold-blooded killer, stubbornly blaming everyone but himself. I felt a profound pain, not just for losing my parents, but for losing the brother I'd once hoped would change. After days of proceedings, the jury finally delivered their verdict. The judge, an older man with a deep, authoritative voice, read the sentence. Hayden Stetson, the defendant, is found guilty of first-degree murder of two victims, George Stetson and Carol Stetson. The defendant is sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The courtroom buzzed, but I sat still, feeling as if a weight had been lifted from my chest. Sophia, for cooperating with the police and confessing, received a lighter sentence. 15 years in prison. She bowed her head, tears streaming down, but I felt no pity. She may have been coerced, but she chose silence, and that silence cost my mother's life. The trial concluded and I stepped outside, the weak autumn sunlight brushing my face. Reporters' cameras turned toward me, their questions rapid fire, but I didn't want to answer. I paused for a moment, looking at the crowd and sighing. My parents were wrong to indulge Hayden, I said, my voice low but clear. And the price was their lives. Justice may come late, but it never fails. A few days later, I drove to the cemetery where my parents were buried. The autumn wind blew, carrying a chill and the rustle of leaves. I stood alone before their two graves, placing a bouquet of white chrysanthemums, Mom's favorite flower. I looked at the names etched on the tombstones, and a dull pain mixed with peace washed over me. I kept my promise, I whispered, my voice choked. The truth has been revealed. I stood there, letting the wind ruffle my hair, letting memories of my parents flood back. They weren't perfect. They were wrong to place so much faith in Hayden. But they were my parents, and I loved them despite the heartbreak their favoritism caused. The pain remained on my face, a scar that would never heal. But with it came a fragile peace. I had closed this tragedy, brought justice for my parents. Yet its echoes, the loss, the betrayal, and the questions with no answers, would follow me forever. I turned, walking away, leaving the white flowers on their graves, knowing a part of me would always remain here with my parents in memories that would never fade.